Doctor? Why won't he wake up? My mum whispered, gripping the bed rail in the ICU. My dad stood frozen, watching the cardiac monitor's rhythmic beeping. I simply reviewed his chart, placed it back on the bedside table, and walked out without a word. 30 minutes later, my pager erupted. Surgical consult cancelled. Conference payment blocked. Hospital EMR access logged out. My colleague messaged, "Are you serious?" I replied. What got me the most wasn't the words. It was the way they said it. Like I didn't matter. Like I was some first-year resident who had shown up uninvited to rounds. I'd spent weeks preparing this. Late nights after my shifts, reviewing treatment protocols, comparing rehabilitation facilities, double-checking with the chief of medicine who swore that the whole medical team was going to be there for the case presentation. And she wasn't wrong. The conference room had 6 attendings in it. When I arrived, I recognized every one of them. Cardiologists, neurologists, even Dr. Harrison's outdated briefcase was there. But when I walked in, the only thing I got was a scalpel slicing through silence and a voice that didn't even look at me. "Why are you here?" She didn't pause, didn't even glance over her shoulder, like I was interrupting grand rounds. And then my father, sitting at the conference table like it was just another morning huddle with coffee and patient charts, said it. "Didn't we tell you this case was for senior staff only?" That was the line. That was it. Not even a joke. Not even a smirk like he was teasing, just flat, like I wasn't even part of that word anymore. Staff. I had the presentation folder in my hand, leather-bound with navy blue dividers separating each section. Inside, a comprehensive treatment plan I spent hours developing, peer-reviewed studies, and at the bottom, a slim white envelope with approval for 2 spots at Johns Hopkins, a 6-month fellowship, private research lab, full funding, everything they ever said they'd achieve someday if we ever had the opportunity. I gave them that someday. And they didn't even let me present. I didn't speak. I didn't ask why. I didn't explain. I just walked to the podium, placed the folder down carefully like it was glass, and walked out of the room without looking back. Dr. Chen saw me from the hallway and started to get up. But I didn't stop. No one stopped me. Got in my car and drove 2 blocks before I had to pull over. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry yet. I was just done. Done trying. Done pretending like being treated this way was normal. By the time I reached the hospital parking garage, my pager started vibrating nonstop. Surgical consult cancelled. Conference payment blocked. Hospital EMR access logged out. And then the cherry on top, my colleague's message. "Are you seriously doing this?" I stared at her text, thought about how I just helped her secure that $17,000 research grant she couldn't qualify for, how she told me I was the only one who actually helps. Thought about how she'd cried when I transferred the deposit to her account so her lab wouldn't lose funding. "Are you seriously doing this?" I replied. "Seriously doesn't even begin to cover it." They didn't know about the Hopkins Fellowship yet. Not a clue. No one except Dr. Chen, who helped me submit it and promised to keep it quiet. I had planned to announce it during the presentation right after reviewing outcomes. I'd even preloaded slides with survival rates and recovery statistics onto a USB to display on their conference room screen. That was going to be the moment. That was the plan. Now the plan was different. Now I was done playing nice. They wanted to act like I was just the backup physician that got called when the department was short-staffed. Fine. I'd pull my credentials, and none of them, not even my colleague, had any idea just how dark it was going to get. By the time the sun went down, I had the whole scene in my head like a case study I'd already reviewed 100 times. Resident Jenny would have been the one to open the presentation folder. I could just picture her, always thorough. She probably pulled out the abstract first, skimmed it, then paused at the envelope. Maybe someone joked, "Ooh, mystery diagnosis," before she slid the acceptance letters out. Then came the silence. Then came Dr. Harrison, who was definitely on his 3rd espresso by that point, loudly declaring something like, "Dr. Mills really went all out, huh? She secured you both a whole fellowship at Hopkins just like that. No warning. Just tossed it out there like I was the locum tenens who forgot to show up." And my parents, I imagine my mom paused mid-breath. My dad probably leaned forward in his chair like he was trying to catch up with what he just heard. And then came the realization they just dismissed their star physician out of the conference room. I didn't need to be there to know exactly how it unfolded. I'd seen versions of it my whole career. First the regret, then the scramble, then the damage control. But none of that mattered. Because while they were reeling and whispering and looking around for someone to blame, I was at home sitting in the quiet. A real kind of quiet. The kind you only get when you shut the whole hospital out. I made 1 cup of coffee for myself, poured a glass of wine, turned off every hospital notification on every app, and put my pager face down on the counter. Then I turned it off completely. I didn't want to see their names, not one of them. I had no guilt, not even a flicker of it. They always found a way to make me feel incompetent, even when I gave them everything. And this time, I'd given them something huge, something no one else had. A fellowship they talked about for years, like it was unreachable. And they didn't just reject me. They didn't even ask what I was doing there. Didn't even care. When I woke up the next morning, I turned the pager back on just to see how bad it was. It lit up immediately. 22 missed pages, voicemails from both parents, 3 from my colleague. The texts were worse. Long paragraphs full of medical jargon, emojis. "Sweetheart doctor, we're so sorry. You didn't tell us. We didn't know." Like they could flip the whole thing back with fake concern. By the time I finished reading the messages, someone knocked at my door. I already knew. I didn't open it at first, just stood there watching them through the peephole, both of them dressed like they were coming from rounds. My dad held a bag of bagels, hospital cafeteria with the label still on. My mom clutched one of those generic thank you cards people keep in the nurses' station for last-minute retirements. They looked like strangers trying to sell me something. When I finally opened the door, they smiled like nothing had happened. My mom stepped forward immediately. "We just wanted to discuss the case." I let them in, mostly because I wanted to see how long they could keep up the performance. They sat down like visitors. My dad tried to joke about night shifts. My mom asked about my patients. And finally, like I knew they would, they got to the point. She said it carefully, like she was afraid to break it. "You didn't withdraw the fellowship, did you?" I didn't even hesitate. Told them it was gone. I'd transferred the whole position to someone else that morning. The shift was instant. All that fake warmth drained from their faces. But they didn't say anything, just sat there. I didn't offer more. No explanations, no reassurances, no apologies. After a few awkward minutes, they stood up and left without touching the bagels. My dad said they'd talk later. My mum gave me a look like she was calculating something, like a diagnosis was forming. I thought that was it. But later that night, I'd find out just how wrong I was. Part 3. Retaliation. The only reason I knew something was wrong was because of the angle. My car didn't sit right when I turned into the physician's lot. It was leaning forward like it had developed acute suspension failure. For a second, I thought I was being paranoid. But as I pulled into my reserved spot, the fluorescent light hit just right, and I saw it. 2 front tires slashed. Not deflated, not low, destroyed. I didn't get out of the car immediately, just sat there in the driver's seat, staring at the damage like it was part of someone else's chart. But I already knew it wasn't random. It wasn't some disgruntled patient with a grudge or a vandalism gone bad. It was personal. It was deliberate. It was them. There were only 2 people petty enough and stupid enough to think that would get a message across. And they had been in my apartment just hours earlier, all smiles and soft voices, pretending like everything was fine because they thought I still had those positions in my back pocket. I went inside and didn't even take my scrubs off. I opened my laptop, sat at the kitchen counter, and got to work. First, the shared research fund. My parents had been talking about establishing an entire medical scholarship, turning it into a legacy program, maybe even naming it after themselves. They couldn't afford the whole thing, so I agreed to pitch in. Quietly, of course. Every month, I'd been transferring $1,200 to a separate account I set up just for grants. They didn't know the exact amount, but they knew I was covering most of it. Paused. Disabled future transfers. Locked it. Then my colleague. She was 2 months into a new rotation she hated and barely keeping her head above water. For the past 6 months, I'd been sliding her $600 each month so she could afford malpractice insurance without maxing her credit card. She never asked twice, just sent the emoji with the little hands praying like that was enough. I opened the banking app, cancelled the recurring transfer, cleared the payment history, unlinked her account entirely. That was 2. Next came the loan. She wanted new diagnostic equipment because everyone at the hospital uses digital systems, and her old one was embarrassing. I'd co-signed for her, got her the upgrade, and then when she started skipping payments, I took over. $17,000 total. I'd been auto-paying it every month without even thinking. I went in, removed my card, cancelled autopay, let the next bill become her problem. 3. After that, I opened every medical journal subscription. NEJM, JAMA, Lancet, Up to Date, Medscape, the ones they'd been using for years without contributing a cent. They never asked, just logged in and acted like it was theirs. Colleagues, right? I changed the passwords on every account, logged out all devices. On Up to Date, I renamed the remaining profile to No More Free Access. On Medscape, I left only one user, me. 4. And then the contractor. He was scheduled to start renovating the medical office next week. He'd already done the waiting room and some of the electrical work I prepaid for, but I still owed him the second half for the full job. I called him, told him to stop, that the rest of the project was cancelled and I'd pay for what was done, but nothing more. He didn't ask why, just said okay. That was 5. It wasn't about revenge. Not at first. It was about balance. For once, I wanted the scale to tip back towards 0. No more just help us out this one time or you know how much we appreciate you. No more guilt tripping me into paying for their mess while they acted like I should be grateful to be involved at all. I had one last thing to check. I opened the app for my security system, clicked the camera footage from earlier that evening. It didn't take long. At 19:12 hours, a car pulled up across the street. Not parked, just sat there. After a minute, the passenger door opened. It was my dad. No hesitation, no looking around. He walked over to my car like he was checking vitals, crouched, stayed there for maybe 20 seconds, then moved to the other side. Another 20 seconds. Then he got back in the car. They drove off. My mom was driving. I didn't save the footage. I didn't need to. Instead, I turned my phone back on. It buzzed immediately. New messages from both of them. The tone had shifted again. No more sweet talk. My mom, we need to consult. You're taking this way too far. My dad, this is still your department. Don't throw it all away. My colleague, what is going on? Why is my payment gone? I didn't reply to any of them. I just sat in the dark, letting them feel what I'd felt for years, unseen, unheard, unimportant. The next day started too quietly. No buzzing pager, no knock at the door, not even a single email from admin. It was like the hospital had paused just long enough for something to go wrong. I didn't trust it. By noon, I found out why. A knock at my door. Not the usual half-hearted kind either. This one was fast and sharp, like whoever was on the other side was too angry to be polite. I checked the peephole. My colleague alone. I opened the door halfway, just enough to block her from walking in. She didn't wait, didn't even say hi. You cut off my loan payment? No lead up, no pretense. I told her yes. I also told her I cut off everything else too, insurance help, journal access, and that she should probably check with Mom and Dad before asking why. She looked at me like I'd contaminated her. You're seriously punishing me for something they did? I didn't say anything at first. I let the silence stretch. Then I asked, "Did you say anything when they kicked me out of the conference room?" She didn't answer. "Did you advocate for me once?" More silence. Then she tried a different angle. "Okay, maybe I didn't. But you think slashing your own colleagues' tires is normal?" I just blinked at her. "You think I don't know it was them? You think I don't have it on camera?" That stopped her. She looked away for the first time, fidgeted with her stethoscope, then almost under her breath. "Mom said you wouldn't file charges. That was it." I stepped back, told her I was done, and closed the door in her face. Not hard, not dramatic, just enough to end it. 5 minutes later, my phone started blowing up again. My mum sent another series of texts, apologies, explanations, diagnoses that didn't make sense. My dad followed up with some nonsense about needing to release the pressure. They were spiraling now, grasping for anything that would keep me from doing what they thought I might. But then came something I didn't expect. A message from a resident I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. Brandon trained with me, transferred across the country, barely kept in touch. The message was short. "Hey, you might want to check the hospital forum. Dr. Harrison posted something weird." So I did. Dr. Harrison, known for barely understanding how to use the EMR properly, had apparently decided to take a side. He posted a rant, long, angry, public, about ungrateful residents, fake professional loyalty, and how even the most generous mentor can be poisoned by entitlement. He didn't say my name, but he didn't have to. Everyone in the department group chat would know exactly who it was about. That wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the comment section. Attendings, residents, people I hadn't heard from in years, all chiming in. Guess who wasn't invited for a reason? Thought she was better than everyone. Always flashing credentials, but no respect. I sat there scrolling, watching the pile-on happen in real time. My department had turned on me again, but now it was public. And then came the message that made me freeze. I think we deserved those positions, not her. It was from my mom, not to me, to Dr. Harrison in the comments under his post, like she forgot for a second that I could read. I sat there staring at it for a full minute. Then I picked up my phone not to reply, not to yell, to post. And I did. One screenshot. The fellowship letters. Full acceptance. Total value $114,420 with a caption. This was their opportunity. They told me senior staff only. Guess they meant something else. Then I turned the phone off again. Let them fight over the ashes. By the next morning, my post had blown up way more than I expected. I hadn't tagged anyone, no names, just a screenshot and a sentence. But that didn't matter. The people who needed to see it saw it, and the ones who didn't were quickly filled in by everyone else. By noon, I had 20 unread messages. By 1300, I had 42. By 1400, I had a voicemail from Dr. Harrison himself, his tone a lot less brave than the one he used on the forum. He wanted to clarify the situation, said he didn't realize the full story. Right. The rest of the department chat imploding. Half the residents were siding with me. The other half were pretending they'd never commented anything. Screenshots were flying around. And the group admin, Dr. Patel, finally archived the chat and texted me privately to say, "It's a damn war zone." I hadn't even moved from my couch. Around 1500 hours, there was another knock at my door. Not my colleague this time. My parents. They didn't wait for me to open it. They just stood outside, ringing the bell, then knocking again over and over. I didn't move. After 5 minutes, I heard the envelope slip under the door. When they left, I picked it up. Inside was a handwritten letter from my dad. I could tell he wrote it quickly. His handwriting was a mess, and the pen bled in a few spots where he probably pressed too hard. He said they were sorry, that they weren't thinking clearly, that it wasn't supposed to go that far. He ended it with a single line. "We've waited 35 years for that recognition. Please don't punish us for one mistake." I laughed out loud. One mistake. I could have made a medical record of their one mistakes. Not even 30 minutes later, I got a call from the contractor who was supposed to finish the office renovations. He said my dad had reached out to him, offered to take over the payments, but the card declined twice. Then came the second call from the equipment company. My colleague's loan payment bounced. The account would be suspended in 3 days if the balance wasn't covered. They were already decompensating. By the evening, Dr. Jenny messaged me, the same one who probably opened the presentation folder. She told me my mom had called her crying, trying to get her to guilt me into restoring just the fellowship, said she could handle the rest falling apart. But that position, that was everything. I didn't respond. I didn't even think about responding until the next day when I went out to get groceries and noticed the side of my house. Spray paint, not huge, but clear enough. Heartless. That was it. Red letters, all caps on the siding near my kitchen window. Just one word, but it told me everything I needed to know. They weren't done. They were doubling down. When manipulation didn't work, it turned to shame. And when shame didn't work, they went for vandalism. I filed a report with the police not because I thought anything would come of it, but because I wanted documentation. Then I called a painter to get a quote. It would cost $950 to clean, prime, and repaint the side of the house. I already knew who used to help me pay for house maintenance. And I already knew that moving forward, not a single one of them would see another cent. They wanted to burn it all down. Fine. Let's see how well they survived the complications. By the end of the week, the department chat had gone silent. No case discussions, no photos of someone's publication, no conference reminders, just silence, like the whole. Department had agreed to stop pretending it was ever a team at all. I kept the voicemail from the police, just a courtesy call to let me know they documented the incident and would monitor the area for further reports, which meant, we won't do anything unless you catch them red-handed with a spray can in daylight. I didn't care. The damage was minor. The point had already been made. I had the house repainted the next day. While the painter worked, I sat on the porch with coffee, scrolling through old photos of conferences and grand rounds where I was the one presenting cases and covering shifts. They always smiled big when they were on the receiving end. Not anymore. The final message came Saturday morning. My dad, a voice note, because apparently texting had failed him. He said they'd made a mistake, that they lost their temper, that I misunderstood their reaction in the conference room that day, that it was supposed to be a joke. Then, after a long pause, he dropped the real reason for the message. We can't secure the Hopkins position ourselves. It's not like we can ever achieve something like that again. You know this. He was trying to sound defeated, but I heard the edge underneath, the blame wrapped in disappointment. That afternoon, I called the fellowship coordinator. I told them the situation, told them I had already transferred the position to a colleague. They were professional about it, said I could still send a withdrawal notice to the original candidates if I wanted, just for formality. I didn't let them wonder. Then I logged into the bank and made one final change. I had a shared emergency account with my parents. They didn't touch it often, but it was there just in case. Quiet, reliable. They considered it a backup plan, something they assumed I'd always fund just in case things got critical. I emptied it. $12,000 transferred to a separate personal fund I created under a name they'd never recognize. That night, I got one last text from my mom. If you don't help us, everything collapses. She was right. The office renovation stalled. The contractor cancelled. My colleague's equipment was repossessed. She switched to outdated tools she probably borrowed with the last of her credibility. The department group chat never recovered. Residents started whispering behind closed doors, realizing maybe they picked the wrong side. And me, I started sleeping better. The worst part of all this wasn't the slashed tires or the graffiti or the way they twisted everything to make themselves the victims. It was realizing that for years I gave, and they only valued me when they needed something. Now, they needed a miracle, and I wasn't in the business of saving them anymore. It's been just over 3 months since everything imploded. I didn't think they'd stay quiet this long, but apparently professional ruin comes with its own kind of silence. Then last Thursday, I got a letter in the mail. Not a bill, not junk. Handwritten, no return address. The handwriting was shaky, looked like someone had written it with tremor or purposefully disguised. Inside was a single line. Chief wants to see you. She's not doing well. No name, no details, just that. I hadn't seen the chief of medicine in almost a year. Last I heard, she was still sharp, still operating, still the only one in the department who never asked me for favors. She never got involved in politics. She just observed, judged quietly, and kept to herself. So I paged her. She answered immediately like she'd been waiting for the call. We talked for 15 minutes. She didn't ask me about Hopkins. She didn't mention the department chat. She didn't even bring up the tires or the position or the forum post. Instead, she asked if I'd help her with something. Not money, not coverage, not even anything big. She wanted to transfer her practice. Said she was tired of playing witness to all the dysfunction, that she was moving to a smaller hospital downstate, that she didn't trust anyone else in the department to help her handle the transition. I said yes without hesitating. The next day, Resident Brandon called me out of the blue. Said, "Did you really talk to the chief?" I told him, "Yeah." He paused, then said, "She's leaving the practice to you. You know that, right?" I didn't. Turns out she changed her succession plan a month ago. Removed my mom. Removed Dr. Harrison. Removed half the people who were still waiting for her to retire so they could split the patient panel like vultures. Brandon didn't say much after that. Just, well-deserved, and hung up. A week later, I drove down to the hospital where the chief worked. She met me at the entrance with her white coat still on, a stethoscope in her pocket. She looked tired, not frail, just done. We spent the afternoon going through patient files, transitioning the practice with lawyers she trusted, packing up research she didn't want strangers handling. She didn't cry. She didn't give any speeches about medicine or forgiveness or legacy. She just handed me the keys and said, "Do what you think is right." That night, I slept in the call room, the one with the narrow bed and the fluorescent light that always made me feel safe during residency. I hadn't felt safe in a long time. In the morning, before I left, the chief handed me a small envelope. It was thick. I opened it in the car. Inside was a check, $15,000. In the memo line, she'd written, "For damages and for your peace." I didn't deposit it. Not right away. But I kept it in my wallet, a reminder that not all mentorship has conditions. That sometimes the people you least expect will show up when it matters most, and the ones you sacrifice everything for, they'll only notice when you stop sacrificing. I still haven't spoken to my parents or my colleague or Dr. Harrison. The office I was renovating remains half-finished with an exam room full of exposed wiring and half-installed equipment. The car with the slashed tires got new wheels. I paid for them myself. I didn't file charges. I didn't retaliate. I just disconnected. I changed my number, got a new email, blocked every one of them on social media. There's peace in silence when you've earned it. I donated the leftover presentation materials to a residency program, the research papers, the peer-reviewed studies, even the little envelope I had prepared so carefully. Somewhere, Someone else needed to feel what I never got to. Valued, included, celebrated. Now, when people ask why I don't attend department meetings anymore, I just smile and say, I've already presented, and I never want to go back. Because colleagues aren't just co-workers. It's who shows up. It's who listens when you say this is wrong. It's who stops harming you when they realize they are. And when they don't, you stop returning to the trauma just because it used to teach you. You build your own practice. And if anyone ever asks what happened, I tell them the truth. I gave them everything. And when I stopped, they showed me exactly who they were. So I left, and this time I stayed gone.